Welcome to Compliance Lab. My name is Sarah Sawyer, and I'm joined by my good friend, Rose Mesina, who is an economist and director for Resolution Economics. I'm an attorney and department chair at Offit Kurman Attorneys at Law. I wear a couple hats, as the title indicates. I serve as an outside general counsel for businesses, helping them with everything from compliance and risk management to litigation, often dealing with a lot of employment issues and compliance issues. Additionally, in my role as department chair, I oversee a department made up of several practice groups. And similar to running a division in a company, this means I'm responsible for managing attorney performance, setting strategic direction, and ensuring that we deliver results. Looking forward to all the information that we'll be sharing with Compliance Lab. Riz, tell me a little bit about yourself and your role in resolution economics.
Sure. Thank you. First of all, I'm really excited to be doing this with you. I'm Rose Mesina. I'm a director and economist at Resolution Economics, where we assist employers and their counsel by conducting statistical and economic analyses on employment decisions such as pay, hiring, promotions, performance management, and separations from employment, and plenty of others. And whether it's a proactive risk assessment or in the context of litigation, we work alongside leaders of the business and counsel to ensure that their employment practices are compliant. So I'm really excited to share some things with you and also learn from your legal background and experience assisting clients in these situations.
Thanks, Riz. Look forward to kicking it off. We are kicking off our initial episode of Compliance Lab. And for this video series, we are talking about RIFs, which are reductions in force and separation from employment. We're going to have a couple of videos on this topic. And the first one we're starting with is around auditing your current practices. Myself and my legal practice, we often talk with clients around policies and practices and sticking with them and creating them. And Rose, I know in your industry, you layer in the data and the analysis and the statistics and how we do all of that. When a client comes to me, a lot of times they're just getting started. They're focused on whatever it is their business is, selling widgets, providing a service, whatever it might be, and then layering in all the business part of it to get that done. I want to create this widget. I want to do this thing. I need people to do that. And the people are a big part of it in most industries, not every industry. And have to start developing, all right, well, what do? I start hiring employees. I start getting more employees. All of a sudden, I have more layers of management. My business is going really well. Hopefully, that's the goal for most businesses. So what do I do now? What's my exposure? All of a sudden, I have 100 employees, 200 employees. And a lot of times, folks can really get that momentum going and they can buy all the good products and implement all the good systems and hire all the good people and lose track of, well, what am I really doing? What do those systems look like? Whether they're relying on people or whether they're relying on technology, AI in particular, in current times. As far as implementing those things, Rose, I obviously focus a lot on the compliance side of things. I know you do as well in your work with employers and you work with people like myself, attorneys, when you're doing your work. When we're talking about the technology and the data and trying to get your arms around what do I have? And so where to start? If the company's going to look at their policies, procedures, practices, technology, what's a good starting point in trying to, as far as a goal of what to look at?
Yeah. First of all, with the work that we do with our clients, sometimes they have their data ready, especially when they know that they want to do some sort of audit or if there's a legal challenge that they want to defend against. Depending on the organization, you might have all of that ready already. You just need to call your HRIS person and say, hey, I need person by person. How much are they being paid? What are their characteristics? What's their job, etc. And that's all great. And that really lends itself to a quick risk assessment, whether you're looking at your potential risks for discrimination or just general business trends. But not all organizations are there yet, especially for smaller and if you're just starting out and you suddenly have all of these systems that you have to pull together. I would say to really prepare yourself, first you need to start with a list of what are the technologies that are being used in my business? Which ones of them are automated, doesn't require human input, or which ones create some sort of baseline and starting point. And then the next step is human input and making the ultimate decisions. It's coming from a human, for example. Like you said, this more current landscape of AI. You have all of these different tools that maybe some of them are fully automatic. you're suddenly given a list of things that you can action on, or you have a good baseline that you can have humans look at and then further build on. It's making a list of all those technologies, all those systems, and then identifying your high risk technologies. So which ones are making consequential employment decisions, which ones are tracking your payroll and timekeeping, if you want to think about wage and hour compliance there. Which of these systems do you need to look at first that will store data and potentially help you audit employment practices down the line? Again, starting with the list and understanding what these technologies actually do, and then ranking them from high to low risk, but just looking at what's most relevant for the business and for the legal considerations.
Yeah, and having a good sense of, from my perspective as an attorney, I think that these systems and technology that people are using can be really a great thing because it really can help from a practical perspective, obviously, manage your business. I always think about litigation. If we end up in a situation where someone's suing one of my clients, what is the data going to look like? And having a good grasp on what your data looks like, if you got a subpoena or something happened and you had to turn it all over, you don't want to feel like you don't know what that's going to look like. You'd prefer to know what that looks like ahead of time before you ever get sued. And hopefully you never get sued. But it can be a double-edged sword in the sense that you want to know what your data is looking like. You want to know what you have. You want to know what you're tracking. And then you want to see how it looks and occasionally take a look at it and see, are there trends? Because it can also be helpful in identifying trends that maybe you're not aware of in how you're making decisions and what's happening. It's important to know what your data looks like and have a good handle on that because as a lawyer, I think about litigation a lot, and you want to make sure that digital footprint is not only a useful tool to you in the way that you described, because it can be a really useful tool. And a lot of these systems now have things where they can actually do a lot for you, whether it be timekeeping. You can tell the system, hey, go do this for me, and it will likely do it and do it well. But are you making sure it actually is? And do you know what that looks like? And do you know what those records look like? And have you double checked just to make sure? Because a lot of it can spit out good data too. A good example on more of the discrimination side is if you can pull out a whole department, let's say you have 50 people in a department, you can use your technology to essentially notice patterns in that department, whether it be for performance or demographics. That's great if you're using it appropriately and if it looks good. If it doesn't look so good or there's patterns that are in it where it's doing things that you're not intending it to do, it could be a problem. I had a client once who they had a low performer. They were trying to find some information about how this person was doing and what they were doing. And IT said, oh, we can track their keystrokes if you want us to pull it. And my client had no idea that information was even being tracked. And they don't want to track that. And they want to know that. They don't want to have that stored somewhere. That is too for a variety of reasons. So I think that's really great advice is to look at the risk and know, and working with folks like yourself, your attorney in a regular cadence, checking on who has access to what you're actually using, whether it's working. So obviously establishing what you have is a really good starting point. How are we relying on it? And what policies do we have? And what are some things that you see as important in that realm?
Data governance is really important because if you have data, but turns out it's stagnant, it's not giving you real-time information. And when it becomes relevant, you suddenly have really old data. Even regular auditing of, are we updating job information for people every time we move them? Are we doing such that at any point in time, if I want to know where we are today, then I have current information? That's really important because most times you want to know the current state of your organization and you don't want old data. So all of the governance, having people regularly update and cleaning and maintaining your data well is really important because you might need it to defend yourselves in some situations in the future, but hopefully not.
Yeah, making sure it's comprehensive. And a big note from that point on my end of things is that because of the additions of technology into the workforce and to HR practices, there have been guidance and decisions that have come out from various agencies and from the courts on people who are relying on this technology, especially as it relates to decision making and active actions towards employees, that if your tech system screws up, AI is not being called from a judge. You are. It's not to scare people away from using it because I think there's so many great uses for it. And as a lawyer, we try to scare people a lot. And I'm not trying to do that for anyone who's watching this because I think that it's the future and it's going to make us all more efficient and it can be really helpful. I think my main takeaway for us today, from my point of view, is know what you're doing. Pay attention to it. Take the time. Make sure you got the policies in place. Make sure you're regularly checking on these things and that ultimately that you realize you've got the responsibility as the humans using the technology, collecting the data, to stay up with what you need to do from a compliance perspective, to keep an eye out for your own bias, to keep an eye out for the tax bias, to do those things. And it might sound like a lift, but I think it's still ultimately a win to use these technologies and have that information. If you're thoughtful about it and you collaborate with folks who can be helpful, then it can be a really great tool. But it's not a set it and forget it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you need to have a layer of checking. Trust and verify. Trust, but verify.
I like that. That's a good one. Well, thank you, Ruth. We'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks, Sarah.